All right, in this next video, we're going to talk a little bit about fossil record and extinct species and things that go along with that. So it's been estimated that about 99% of all the species that have ever lived on Earth are extinct. That's a lot of things that aren't here anymore. Fortunately, for scientists, for biologists, there's evidence of at least some of those through the fossil record. So fossils provide information about extinct species, which are species that have died out completely on Earth. They're no longer here. Fossils can be large, perfectly preserved, like an entire animal, like the woolly mammoth that was discovered over in Russia in the permafrost. They can be small, like bacteria, little embryos, little pollen grains. Sometimes fossils are just pieces of an organism, not a whole organism. Some teeth, parts of a bone, a piece of a leaf, an imprint of a part of a leaf. Sometimes we just see the trace things that maybe an organism left, footprints, burrows, tracks, or even droppings that have become fossilized. So most fossils are preserved in what we call sedimentary rock. Some are preserved in other ways, like in amber, which is fossilized sap, and other places like the frozen in the permafrost or things like that. So fossils form in sedimentary rock. So water carries small rock particles into a lake or into a shallow sea. Dead organisms are buried by layers of sediment. The water and compress the sediments, and they eventually convert the layers of sediment into rock, which then preserves the fossils within them. So what can fossils tell us? What do they tell us about things? They can tell us what they look like. They can tell us the sequence of by which they evolved from a common ancestor. They can tell us about their environment, um, where they lived, how they lived, things like that. So when we go to figure out how old a fossil is, there's two kinds of dating we use: relative dating and uh, radiometric dating, or radioactive using radioactive elements. So relative dating basically involves determining whether a fossil is either older or younger than other fossils in the same area. So it relies on what we call index fossils, fossils that are found pretty much all around the, the area in the layers. And so we know how old these fossils are approximately, and that can help us determine whether the layers are in the correct order or whether there's been some type of geological process that's shifted them. But they can help us, again, figure these things out. Radiometric dating gives us a more precise date. It relies on the fact that radioactive isotopes break down in a predictable, in a steady way from a radioactive isotope into a stable isotope. Now, the difference is in radioactive isotopes, they give off energy in the form uh, of neutrons or protons, excuse me. And as they do that, it changes the atom from one type to another. So the rate at which they break down is called the half-life. It's the time it takes for half of the radioactive atoms in a sample to decay from the radioactive form to the stable form. So let's say the half-life is 20 years. Half of it after 20 years is going to be converted into the stable form. Another 20 years, half of that half, and so on and so on. And so we can look at the ratio of the stable to the radioactive isotopes to determine how old a sample might be. So there's something we call the geological timescale, which is based on both relative and absolute dating data. In the geological timescale, there are major divisions called eons, eras, and pyramids. There are four major eons: the Hadron, Archean, Proterozoic, and Panherozoic. Excuse me. Hadron is when rock first formed. Archean, life first appeared. Proterozoic, stable continents began to form, and eukaryotes evolved. And finally, this is the last one, is from the end of the Proterozoic until present day. Eons are divided into eras, and eras are divided into periods. So here you can see on the graphic the breakdown here. So at the top we're looking at present day. So the present day era is the Cenozoic Quaternary period. You can see how it breaks down into the Mesozoic and so on. You've got the Mesozoic is when the dinosaurs roamed. Cenozoic is when mammals first evolved, and so on and so forth. Here we can see the Paleozoic era, and then the Precambrian time. It's also broken down as well. Okay. So 3 of the 4 eons are what we call Precambrian time. So one thing that's useful is to kind of think of the history of Earth as a 24-hour day. So Earth forms at midnight. At 5:30 in the morning, the first living cells, we have evidence of those. You can see again on the clock, you can see the breakdown with the chart here with the different eras and so on. 8 o'clock in the morning, photosynthesis evolves, and we start getting oxygen in the atmosphere. And about 12:48 in the afternoon, eukaryotes show up. Multicellular organisms show up about 5:30 in the evening. Chordates, which are things that have a notochord, which is us. Land plants, pteropods, land animals. The dinosaurs show up about 10:45. Mammals about 10:58, so they haven't been around very long at all. Flowering plants, 11:20. The dinosaurs go extinct at 11:39. We think they went extinct a long, long time ago, but on the scale, it's pretty recent. And finally, 11:58 and 56 seconds is when we show up. So one of the things we know from studying geology is that the land masses of the continents are not set in place. There's something called plate tectonics, which the theory explains the movement of the continents and how that affects the oceans. We start with Pangea, and it spreads apart till current day. And you can, again, that changes the environments on the land masses as they separate and they become either more internal or more on the coast. They shift in their latitude and longitude, and all of those things affect the climate, which affects the kinds of living things that lived in different parts of the world in different times, and again also can affect whether things can move and interact with one another based on which part of this history of life we're talking about. So all of these things have caused changes in climate. Geological forces like plate tectonics, uplift of mountains and so forth, and biological forces like evolution, competition, and so forth have had an effect on the things that live on Earth.